All right. I'd like to call to order the December 5th, 2018 Town of Shelburne Development Review Board meeting. As always, we'd like to first start out the meeting by opening up for public comment on any items that are not on the agenda. Any public comment for anyone? All right. Friendly reminder, if you do plan to offer testimony or commentary, please sign in so we have you on record when doing such. All right. So before we get started, I just want to pass around to any DRB members. Is there any conflict of interest or ex parte communications we need to be aware of or public needs to be aware of?
Conflict of interest with respect to item 5, which is already in the record of the prior hearing on that matter, and number 7.
All right. Thank you, John. Very good. All right. With that, let's get started. First item is review of last session's minutes, November 7th meeting. And I'll open it up. I do have a question that I'm going to call upon the memory of other board members. And if we go to page 7, when we were writing up the deliberation decision for this particular, and this was dealing with page 7, yeah, page 7. This was on the final plan for the 4-lot subdivision on Irish Hill Road. Did we discuss that we were going to have any, I want to make sure that as that's written down there, it kind of implies that we approved it as stated there, but I thought we had put a little placeholder that said, like item 10, any other considerations to be discussed in deliberation. And that's because I know afterwards we had talked about a lot of things and we made recommendations on what we want, or we came to a decision on what we wanted on the final.
I would agree with you on that.
Okay.
That that agenda item, it was approved with these conditions, along with anything else that would be discussed, and during deliberations.
Okay. So I would like to get that worked into the minutes so we have that as official record. Were there any other comments from any other board members on the minutes?
I did on page 6. There's a statement there that says the hydrant was discussed but not conditioned, and maybe this is covered by what you were talking about, because we did during deliberation discuss
Correct.
that quite thoroughly. And
I agree with what you're saying, and we should almost, what do you think about striking but not conditioned? It was discussed in the meeting, but we never concluded in public comment whether or not it would be conditioned or not. We left that
correct. So
open.
I think if you strike that not conditioned, then that would be
I agree with that.
fair.
Did you catch that, Ravi?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. Any other comments on the minutes? Okay, moving forward. First application, design review.
Excuse me, Jeff,
Oops.
to vote on approval of the minutes.
Oh, thank you very much.
With the edits as mentioned.
I'd make a motion that we approve the minutes of November 7th, 2018 as amended.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Good catch. Teamwork.
Right.
All right. First application, design review application DR 18-19, application by St. Catherine's of Siena Parish for design review approval. Is anyone here in the audience to talk about this application?
Jeff?
Yes, for this.
All right, this is to be continued.
Yes, this
Got it.
application is asked to be continued until the January 2nd, 2019 meeting, as this is pending HP&DRC approval.
Got it. All right. So that one moves on. Next one, DR 18-22, application by Shelburnewood Mobile Home Co-op. Is anyone here to speak to that application?
even with continuations, it still has to be.
We still have to vote on that?
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. All right. I make a motion that we continue that application to January 2nd, 2019 meeting.
Second.
All's in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Thank you. All right, let's try this one, see how it goes. DR 18-22, application by Shelburnewood Mobile Home Co-op. Is anyone here to speak to this? Very good. Thank you. All right. This is for a design review approval to remove an existing mobile home and replace it with a new Vermod modular home. Property is located at 196 Shelburnewood Drive in the Village Center District, Village Design Review Overlay District, and the Stormwater Overlay District. All right. I'd like to invite staff to comment on this application. Maybe give us a highlight, anything we need to consider?
From staff's perspective, there's nothing of concerns, but I think that the GRB can get a better perspective from the applicant who is present.
Very good. All right. Would the applicant like to come up and tell us a little bit about what's going on? You come up to the mic, and I have to swear you in. You ready? Do you hereby swear and affirm that the evidence you give under cause of consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Very good. Could you introduce yourself for the record?
My name is Matthew Winter. I can't speak on behalf of the board for the removal of the current trailer that's there. My wife and I are building the new Vermod home on that site.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yep, so we're removing the 1980s mobile home that's there that is rotted away. I don't know the specific details, but I know that it's no longer habitable. And we're building a 1,012 square foot Vermod home in at that location. It'll be, I don't remember the exact dimensions off the top of my head. So it's a modular home that will be built in Wilder by Vermod, then trucked up here, put in place, and the construction will be finished on location.
Okay.
There will be a 7 kilowatt solar array on top. So it's built to be a net zero home.
There's already a couple, one or two in there already, is there not?
I believe will be the 5th.
Fifth?
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions from board members?
I'm here.
All okay? All right. Any question from the public? All right.
I would make a motion to approve this application as submitted.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, ayes have it.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next application is SUB 18-3. This is a continuation. This is an application by Civil Engineering Associates on behalf of Elizabeth Whalley for sketch plan review of a 9-lot residential planned unit development. Property is located at 1348 Irish Hill Road and is located in the Rural District and the Stormwater Overlay District.
I'm just going to jump in at this point and state for the record, as a recused member, I'm stepping outside of the room.
Very good, thank you very much, John. All right, is anyone here to speak to this application?
Was there a new plan put forward?
There's not a new plan put forward, but there was a continuance and,
I think it just walked in.
oh, here we go.
Timing is everything.
So you're moving very efficiently?
We are, and, it has nothing to do with the cup of coffee I drank before I got here.
have the one with the ortho photo behind it?
I may not.
It's just a little bit easier on the eyes.
I see.
Yeah, I'll get there. Thank you. Oh, there we go. I think that would be easier for everybody to understand.
Great. All right, Mr. Marshall, let's swear you in. Do you hereby swear and affirm that the evidence you give in cause and consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Thank you. So, last we talked, just to get everyone on the same page, there was a lot of discussion between neighbors and members of the audience, as well as the Natural Resources Board, about what was being proposed, and we suggested that you guys go out and talk to each other and come back in and see what happens.
Right.
All right.
So again, for the record, Dave Marshall from Civil Engineering Associates. Betsy will be here shortly. She is the property owner and applicant in regards to the proposed subdivision. The background is that approximately 2 years ago, we met with the board and had a pre-application meeting. It's required as part of any rural PUD. And as such, the application that's currently before the board was very similar to that. Originally, there was a proposed lot in this particular location that ultimately was removed and consolidated in this particular location as part of the goals of, again, trying to create improved clustering of the property. And other things that were of issue with this remaining lot here was how to access it. And things that we discussed was bringing a driveway across the field. And that was one thing that the board specifically said in its meeting minutes that that was not the desirable way to go. So if we're not going to come across here, we basically chose to come down at the bottom of the hill below the house and basically tie in just through this particular wooded area. One of the things associated with rural PUDs is that it was the language specifically, the intent was to preserve the open spaces that we all enjoy when we're driving up and down Dorset Street and Spear Street, things of that particular nature. And what this particular design did 2 years ago and basically carried through from our original concepts was to basically place the homes on the edges of the woods and not in the main field area. You know, I mean, when you drive through here, you can basically get some beautiful views of the pond and the open space that's associated with the meadow area. And that was what we wanted to preserve. And hence there's nothing proposed in this particular location. When we came before you before, we had many of the neighbors that came out, and they all had their own area of interest in regards to areas of concern. Starting over on this particular side, these particular homes were shown in a way that Betsy had originally intended to make sure that they weren't significant features for those people traveling back and forth from the main house. Her goal is to basically to continue to live on the house, on the land, perhaps in this particular lot here, and to, with that, this particular layout had been done in such a way that it preserved the 75-foot perimeter open space requirement that goes around all the way around the property. And in this particular case, you know, there was a concern or a request to basically move those further out from the property line, further from the neighbors. I guess at this particular point, if we had just done a traditional 5-lot subdivision, the setback would be 50 feet, not 75 feet. So that being the background, you know, we can take a little bit further look at basically how to move those perhaps a little out to the edges, but there's not going to be a significant change with that particular one as far as the applicant is proposing or would be comfortable going. This particular area, we felt very comfortable with regard to how we demonstrated clustering as well as putting things on the edge of the open field and not in the wooded area. One thing that is of interest, you know, this is the wetland when you drive drive by and look on the left, there's basically a wet area that basically occupies this particular portion, and then it becomes more upland here. We wanted to try to preserve that block as part of the preservation of the forested areas, and that was one of the goals in that area. And then as we move out, there's basically ledge, well, bottom line is wherever the homes are is basically ledge outcrop, because otherwise the farmer would have been tilling these areas. So we basically have wooded area here, and we have basically a couple of outcrops of trees that basically is the other component of this particular location. When we met with the Natural Resources Board, they expressed some interest or goals of basically trying to make that lot go away, calling a spade a spade. They didn't like the length of the driveway and just the fact that it was located in yet another wooded area. Things that come back to us when we first looked at this particular property many years ago, we're looking for resource mapping. And the thing that struck me was that the state of Vermont went to every community and mapped all of the basically wildlife habitat. Basically, it's based on wooded areas and their contiguous nature and whether and the value of them. They assign a value of 0 to 10, 10 being really good, 0 being the other side. And what struck me here is that there wasn't any wooded area that had any value according to the state of Vermont Fish and Wildlife. So, not saying that there isn't any value, but as far as a independent third party basically coming in and looking at these neighborhoods and how they've all been developed all around it, the bottom line is the damage had already been done with regard to at least any significant type of wildlife habitat. So that being the background, that's where we came from. And we come back before the board after Betsy had reached out to the neighbors. Tom, I don't know if you were reached out to, so. Tom lives down below. This would be up above Tom's house, but Tom's right down in this location. And that all being the background, she reached out to these particular people, tried to leave messages if they didn't have a chance to meet face to face to talk about, what the project was about, what she's trying to do, and out of all that, I don't know if really there was much budge room on ultimately when all things were said and done. So at this point, that's where we were before we received the staff report. I guess I was I was very surprised as far as the recommendations that came out in the staff report. Specifically, it talked about some setbacks or areas where the home should be within X number of feet of Dorset Street and Irish Hill Road, with no specific guidance on preserving, the original intent of what the rural PUD is all about. So, and it really was just a play to basically get rid of this lot. And if that's the concern, then just say it. But right now, it's really disappointed with that particular approach. So, and I don't say that very often, but I was really taken aback about that. So, long story short is that, we asked the board to, basically talk about this layout. This is, again, what we came to the board with originally, and what in the whole intent of these particular PUD pre-sketch plan application is to vet these issues. And, now we're at sketch plan, and we're basically rehashing the same things all over again, but at a point where Betsy's goals, this is ultimately her nest egg, is to basically erode away portions of that. Not to say that we don't have to comply with the rules, but you can't make up the rules as you go along either. So that being the background, I know that's very negative. I usually try to be very positive as far as those types of things, but that being the background, that's kind of our position right now in regards to what our efforts have been and how we move forward.
Thank you. Questions from the board members?
I have a question from staff. My initial impression here was, where did the 500 and 650 numbers come from?
So To be frank, those numbers were mainly floated upon the board to provide some sort of, guidance in order to encourage clustered development in this, on the subject property, just as a suggestion of where possibly development could occur, or any range of numbers that the DRB could consider in order to encourage clustered development. Those aren't strict numbers. Those aren't exact numbers. Those are assessed based on the A&R atlas of developable lands, and determining where development would be suitable according to according to the definition sections of the bylaws and developable lands. But the DRB has, as always, an discretion over that number and discretion over that condition as well, in order to encourage cluster development.
Okay, because that's pretty prescriptive language, the
Yeah.
900, and
Yeah.
650 and 500. So,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Dave, I was wondering, on the southern border of the property, I see there's a pond in the adjacent neighbor, right there.
Right there.
In that general area, where is the residence or the
There's
buildings?
one home here, and I believe the other one is right here.
Okay.
Betsy, is that right? Yep. I'm sorry, Betsy's not been sworn in yet, but
Oh, Betsy, would you like to be sworn in? Thank you. Do you hereby swear and affirm that the evidence that you give under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Thank you very much. Could you help just identify where, on the southern border, where there are neighbors' houses?
So, Tom, this is your home right here, and that's a home there, I believe. Maybe I'll get closer so my eyes don't betray me.
No, that's not.
So, there's a home here.
That's where do I have to get sworn in?
Yeah, absolutely. We should have done a group swearing, sorry about that. Do you swear and affirm that the evidence and testimony you give under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under pains and penalties of perjury?
Nothing but the truth.
Nothing but the
I
truth.
do.
Thank you.
It's all gonna be true. Want me to stand up?
Oh, that's cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tom, these are just for the audience,
All right.
essentially.
Tom Kerner here. I live currently right here. I've lived there for 30 some odd years. Prior to that, I lived up there in that corner,
This one?
14 years. So I've happily trespassed over your land for 35 or 40 years. And it's been great. I have 5 acres here and 5 acres here.
Okay,
And so, does that answer your question?
that's part of it. As we go further west.
Rick Stoner lives right here. Torneys live over here and own their land goes like this. And I
yeah,
guess
it
those
does.
are the abutters on
Okay.
that neck of the woods.
Okay, can we keep working our way to the west?
I don't know everybody over the west.
Well, you don't have to know them. I just want to know where there might be houses.
Well, Dave Pomerlee's right there,
Oh, you want to start up in the top?
up there.
Okay.
Jeff Beers is right here. Is that his house? Yep. And I don't know who owns that.
No, we,
And so, Dave, right there where you're pointing, that's another house right there?
it appears that way. It kind of gets cut off on the plan,
Okay.
but it certainly
that's
looks like a
access from-
footprint.
I'm just trying to understand how developed that area to the south is.
Okay.
It's not very developed.
Yep.
But it's developed as far as it can be developed in that zone.
Okay. All right, any other questions from the board? Okay, open it up for public comment. Let's do a mass swearing. Any of those, all those who wish to testify, offer comment. You already did, you're good. All right. Do you hereby swear and affirm that the evidence and testimony you give under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under pains and penalties of perjury? Very good, thank you. Who would like to go first? Come on up.
The last meeting that I was at,
Could you please introduce yourself?
yes, my name is Ed Canary, and I live right at the corner of Pond Road and Dorset Street. And the last meeting I was at, I voiced a concern about that access road, which is going to come out on Irish Hill. Or
Can we-
Dorset, I'm sorry.
Can we be more specific so we can understand where you're pointing?
And have you looked at, yes, thank you, Tom.
Back there, okay, got it.
And have you looked at where that's entering Dorset Street? Because that's a blind spot. There's a steep hill there. And coming in either direction, it could be a problem. Has anybody looked at that? I'll leave. That's my comment.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
David wants to clarify.
Please, yes, Dave, could you clarify? There's a question that was posed.
So, yes, our previous testimony is we met with Paul Goodrich at that particular area. Very much a concern as far as sightlines. So this particular driveway intersection was cited specifically at the crest or the high point of the curve before it breaks down sharply. Whoops. So this is the intersection, and basically there's moderate grade, and then it drops off very quickly down into this particular low point. And we chose, and Paul Goodrich specifically asked that the driveway be coming right that way. There was an opportunity down at the low point, but he said, no, I prefer it right there.
Okay, thank you. Okay, who would like to go next?
Can you please use the mic on the mic stand right now?
Do I have to stand up?
No, well,
You can grab the mic and sit back down.
you can.
Oh, you guys come off the
I'm gonna,
That one's dead,
I'm
Tom.
all mic'd up here.
That one's dead.
Okay. Are we rolling off?
Yes.
Tom Kerner again. Dave, can I ask you a quick question? What's the
Ask the board,
I'm sorry. Could the board ask
what's on your mind?
what's the magic of the 9 lots? Why not 10, why not 13, why not 4, why not 2?
When we work with Betsy, this seemed to be the best balance. Density allows up to 14. We don't have on-site wastewater for 14. We're typically at about 11 range. But Betsy didn't want to do 11. She said 9 is what I think best fits the land as far as the proposed homes on this 8 to 7 acre.
Was that, can I,
Sure, I can.
do I ask you to ask her? Was that
Go
a
ahead.
financial, I don't mean to pry, but is that from a financial thing or from an aesthetic thing? Was there a landscape architect involved? or-
That question's kind of irrelevant.
No.
It's the landowner deciding what they want to do.
So, I thought mine was appropriate.
I do.
Okay. That's my big question. My small question, which is not small, is my house is, Dave, can you point to my house again? It's right there. This proposed house to the north of me, from my perspective, is probably, and don't take this as anything, the worst spot on this 100 or some odd acres for a house. It's got a lot of big trees, there's big oaks, there's big hickories, there's big maples. It's all ledge. It's got probably a 25 to 30 foot drop off to Dorset Street with 75 feet. It's 75 feet from my northerly property line. It's probably 120 feet from my well to my house, which was built in 1860, which has got a rubble foundation. I don't want that thing to fall down. But has anybody from your office or any of you actually been out there to see that lot? And you're convinced that that's an okay spot for a house?
Trade you here, actually.
Based on what?
No, we went out to the site, and the areas that they do drop off, just as you described, Tom, in both directions, both to the east as well as the south. But there is an area right up is where it's proposed that would be a suitable site that's not in the meadow. It does require tree cutting, absolutely. And that being the background, it represented a site that met the expectation of not putting things in the middle of the meadow.
And did you consider the fact of the traffic and noise going uphill as a place to live? From Dorset Street. That's the heck of a busy road. And that's, it's your call, but I think.
Right. Well, just as you described, this particular site sits well above both of the road as well as your home. Is it totally divorced from noise? No. You experience it. And all we're getting at is that because of at least the vertical separation in the easterly direction down to that particular roadway, we felt that with the retention of those trees in that particular area, that it would certainly help as far as noise reduction.
Okay. Any closing comments, questions?
I'd just like the board at some point, is there the possibility of a site walk in this thing? To take a look at there. I'm not keen on that spot. That's a large spot for us, and it's, you know, how many acres are out there to be developed? 90, 100? 87.
Yeah.
There's gotta be a better spot for it, or it's gotta be pushed to the north or something.
Well, thank you. Okay. Next.
Both mics are good now, by the way.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Hi, I'm Gail Albert, representing the Natural Resources Committee. And we met with Dave at our last meeting. And first of all, we wanted to commend the project for having moved and not put the houses in the middle of the forest. And there really is a discrepancy between the current town plan and the town plan that's now in progress that hopefully will be approved in February, because the current town plan suggests that homes be put in the forest, whereas the new town plan that is about to be presented to the select board suggests that the forest be preserved primarily because of what we're aware of today in terms of the value of mitigation of stormwater that the trees provide. So we wanted to thank you for putting the homes at least at the verge of the forest as opposed to in the midst of it. The concerns that we still had to do with the length of the road leading to Lot 9, and we had hoped that perhaps Lot 9 could be eliminated or moved closer to the other lots just to improve the clustering capacity of the project. And we were also concerned with the proximity of the septic system to Monroe Brook.
Anything else?
That's about it for now.
Thank you, Gail.
And I think I sent you, or via Dean, we sent you a memo.
Yep.
With most of that information.
Yep. Yeah. That's,
I wanted to ask you, Gail, if that memorandum that Dean authored that's a true and accurate representation of what
yeah,
occurred
that
at the
was,
meeting? Okay. Because it's separate from your minutes. It's kind of an addendum to your minutes, I guess.
It was just it was produced after, without the benefit of the minutes, or with the benefit of the minutes, but as a memo specifically to come to the board.
okay. Any questions from the board for Gail? Okay. Who'd like to go next? Both mics are good.
Good evening, William Forsyth. I live at 1507 Irish Hill Road. So since the last meeting, I did have a chance to meet with Betsy. We went out and walked the woods and wood line.
Could you be kind enough to kind of illustrate on the?
So on the northern edge of the field, so go to the west a little bit. The three homes that are proposed in a line there along the wood line. So we had an opportunity to walk all through there, through the woods, get a feel for the area where the houses were proposed, which was informative. The takeaway that I had is that there's still too many houses being proposed to maintain the rural setting. And I understand that the goal is to have clustered houses. I just don't think that that clustering is in keeping with maintaining the rural setting in the area. One of the other things I took away from it is that the homes, all that's going to happen is you're going to redefine the wood line. There's no, up on the ledge there where those houses are proposed, it's basically right on the top of the ridge. It's all ledge and just scraggly, small undergrowth trees. No, trees that aren't worth salvaging, nothing that you would have in your lawn. So really what's going to happen is the wood line is going to be redefined by, in my estimation, probably 75 to 100 feet. Because there's no salvageable trees there. It's not like you're going to place houses amidst woods. You're just redefining things.
So what you're saying is the houses are going to go where it's really just small trees and nothing significant?
Yes. So you're going to have to remove that in order to build the structures because naturally that's part of construction. And then the other thing, I spoke with the
I'm sorry. Could you highlight, I'm very interested, could you highlight where that actually you're pertaining? Is there's 3 houses there? I'm trying to get a sense of it.
So 1, 2, and 3.
3 there, okay, very good.
They run along the wood line, and they run along more or less, it's sort of a ridge that kind of flattens out.
Okay.
And they're at the high spot, and they're right at the edge, sort of the edge of the current wood line, which it's not going to be the wood line anymore. I spoke with the fire chief and asked him about the driveway that's going to come through the woods. He says they're going to require a 20-foot wide driveway, and if you throw shoulders onto that, you're going to be looking at probably 30 feet of driveway coming up through there. That's also going to be removed. So, from my perspective, just the wood line, really from where the driveway comes in, straight. If you follow the driveway up to the house that's furthest to the southwest there, you're going to be removing huge sections of woods there in order to do this. And it's going to have an effect on the rural setting. It's going to be very obvious from Irish Hill Road at the intersection there as you come down. And I just think it's too much. And I think that if you reduce the number of homes there, just to say 2 or 1, then you're going to reduce the impact. You maybe be able to say if you reduce the middle home, you could maintain more of the sort of the wooded, the undergrowth that would stop that wood line from being redefined.
Okay.
So that really main takeaway. The other thing it struck me, and I would encourage the board to do a site visit. If you do a site visit, please walk out there. Please look at 360. But I really encourage you to not only do that, but to go down to Irish Hill because it's a very different perspective.
Okay. If we do a site visit, it will be warned to the public so the public can also attend.
Yep. Well, I would love to be there. Sure. It's really worth going all around the property to take a look. So those are my concerns, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Who else would like to speak?
Hi, I'm David Diaz, and Betsy did reach out to me. I thank her for that. I wasn't able to join her and walk the property. I was away one weekend and then have just been very busy since, but that was certainly very neighborly, and I have no question that she is pursuing all these things in good faith. Well, number one, I'm confused. We had a big meeting a few weeks ago. Everybody raised these exact points, and Dave again gave a very nice presentation, essentially to tell us that they've changed nothing from the presentation 2-3 weeks ago. So that's unclear to me how this process proceeds. So as nothing has been changed, I have the same concerns, which are William's concerns. I think those 3 houses situated at the edge of the field are going to be immediately visible upon turning the corner from Dorset Street onto Irish Hill. It will look like a subdivision. It will look like a suburb. It will not look like rural land. This is defined in our town map as rural land. It is on the border of conservation land. Last time we were here, I went through the town plan very carefully for my benefit, not for yours, because I know the board is much more familiar with the town plan than I am, but it states that we should strive for very limited impact, that this should be, together with the conservation lands, the focus of our conservation efforts as a town. These are defined clearly as objectives, and again, the issue of 9 houses. Of course, Betsy wants to and is entitled to use her land for profit, but all of us hold our land underneath the guidance of the town. 9 houses out of a possible 12 is not a very limited application of one's property rights. If you have $11 and I take 9 of them, that's not a very small amount which I've taken from you. That's the vast majority. So I think this needs to be curtailed. Betsy will still have the ability to make great use of the property and have a nice distribution of homes. But the plan as it stands, as it stood a few weeks ago, meets with the same criticisms, which I think are very well founded. And I think if we apply the plain language of our town plan, and the town plan is there for the reason of offering guidance, if we apply that plain language, it informs us in terms of which direction we should head.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
Part of our job as the board is to make sure that whatever plans are submitted and approved follow the town's guidelines.
Oh,
So
I know that's
we'll
that's
be-
central to
we'll
your
be
job.
watching that.
And I emphasize, and I say these things very respectfully. You are much more familiar with it than I ever would be. But it just as a novice, this is what strikes me, and I, as a neighbor, that's what I urge to your attention.
Thank you. Dave, would you like to?
Just redirect. As far as my understanding of what the board's obligations are is basically to enforce the the zoning bylaw and the subdivision regulations. And unfortunately, the town plan is a guidance for the development of those particular regulations, but it is not the regulatory authority in regards to how applications are reviewed. So it's good reading. And it also represents an important platform for how the regulations ultimately are put into place to reflect the town's goals. But they don't happen to be the rules. The rules are actually what the zoning bylaws and the subdivision rules say. So that's what this particular application is submitted under.
I'd like to add that the town plan defines its policies as mandatory policies. Mandatory is the word that's used. Mandatory policies, and there are other terms which slip my mind now. It's a pretty strong document, and it offers pretty strong guidance for use if we choose to follow it.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak?
Hi, Jeff Beer. I live on Heather Lane on the west side. So I want to start by, everybody should acknowledge that Betsy's been an unbelievable neighbor for all of us for a long time. And everybody in that whole area, we've used her land, some of us more than others, but without question for as long as I can remember. And I think it's fair to say that this is a really well-intentioned effort to try and do something that's good for, obviously, the community and for Betsy. And so thank you very much for doing that. Betsy did reach out. We didn't get a chance to walk with her, and we will, and I'm not that worried about it. I guess my question goes back to, again, our just concern is the building envelopes within the lot in terms of how much flexibility there is to discuss those things and whether, how much guidance there is with the different parts to have the conversation as to where they fit. Because a lot of the building envelopes right now are very perimeter based, so they seem more impactful on the neighbors necessarily than, and I know there's a lot of consideration to the sightlines from the existing house to where the other houses are, so I just was trying to understand the process by which that goes. And like I said, I'm sure we'll walk through it, and I'm not that concerned about having a conversation about it, but that's where what we're thinking is the houses on the perimeters of the 80 acres are fairly close to the perimeter, and I know it's 75 feet versus 50, but it's still, given the amount of space in the middle, they're all fairly well pushed out to the outside, and so that there seems like there's more risk of having an impact on the existing homes that are surrounding it than there are on the house in the middle. But that's it. But I think we should all recognize that that's been really public land essentially for a long time, and we're all grateful for that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? like to speak? Yes, sir.
My name is Dave Parmalee. I live next to Jeff. And Betsy indeed did reach out to us too very nicely, and I have skied on her property for years. So I as well appreciate that. But I am a little surprised that no modifications were made at all since the last meeting, and that the conserved land has not been joined. It looks like it would be pretty easy to join those two light green areas, which I think would be a benefit. I also feel like Tom did, the Lot 2 is the one that would impact us. We're quite close to that, just like he is to Lot 8.
Could you highlight Lot 2, please?
Lot 2 is up in the upper left. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, up closer to the street, to Irish Hill, yeah. And it's full of ledge. It's a tangle of honeysuckle and buckthorn, and I'm pretty sure whoever bought it would clear out much of that and lay it open. I'm also pretty sure that you couldn't put a foundation in there without blasting. And that's, like I said, about 200 feet from our house, maybe a little bit more. So those are my concerns, and it doesn't look like Dave changed anything at all since the last time. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? Comments, questions, concerns? We'll make sure everyone goes around one time first, and then we'll come back for close. Okay. Yes, sir.
Dave, can I ask you a question? Can I ask you a question? To ask
Sure,
you?
go ahead.
When you draw on your site plan, when you draw a house, for instance, pick any one, what is that, I don't have a scale, what is that basically in terms of square feet?
Tom, good question. I don't have that number off the top of my head. I think the best thing I can do is just take a look at the footprint of the houses. We tried to basically show them as being similar in nature to the neighborhood.
3,000 square feet? Not the footprint,
Let's
but the
just say
house.
that, 2,500, 3,000.
Okay. And I'm curious why on site plans, not necessarily from CEA, from anybody, there's never shown the potential for accessory structures. There's 9 lots out here with 9 houses. I'll bet you any amount of money, every one of these, or a good percentage of them, are gonna have an accessory structure, which is a barn for the boat and all the other junk that people have when they live out here. Do those go into the thinking about the land, the structure, the blasting, the trees? We never see those on site.
Yes. I think one of the important steps for this particular project is actually to identify not only the building envelopes as far as where structures can go, but also, more importantly, the clearing limits. And I think that will help define a lot better what's proposed as far as the applicant and what that means in regards to changes to the wooded areas. The thing that we were hoping to have a discussion with the board was perhaps, how much clearing is appropriate. When it comes to Act 250 and you're dealing with primary agricultural lands, the public policy is that you're allowed to impact 1/4 of the mapped primary agricultural lands. And I'm not saying that we want to take out 1/4 of the trees, but that is, it's a public policy in place for at least one particular type of resource. And the next question is what is an appropriate level of removal, with the understanding that the remaining percentage, 75%, 80%, 85%, is being retained, is the next one of the important discussion points in regards to ultimately the character of each one of these proposed building envelopes.
I have one last question. This is for the board. Can you tell me the language, or maybe Ravi can do it, the language for the 75-foot buffer? Is that, I know that's restricted to no building, but that can be thinned, cleaned, cleared? What can happen in there?
From the top of my head, that is 1930.8. 2, if I'm not mistaken, and that is 75-foot periphery buffer for PUDs in the rural district and 50 feet for PUDs in the residential district, and they must be clear of all structures. I'm still searching. And so, again, from the top of my head, and I will double check once I reach it.
So we'll buy you some time here. So,
Thank you.
okay, any other comments from the public? Yes, please. Could you introduce yourself for the record?
I am Betsy Rich, Whalley, the landowner. I respect everyone's opinion about the land and the feeling, but I have to say that the amount of time I've walked that land and put effort into picking spots has, I can't even imagine how much time. That being said, I think a site walk would be the best thing, because you can't really get a feel for how much space is, say, for example, between my house and Irish Hill, or any of the lots. And Tom, I don't feel that lot is horrible. I've kind of liked that little lot over in the corner. But I know it's near you, and we can talk about it. But I do think a site walk would give you the best feel for the lay of the land and other options for lots, because I didn't pick 9, I picked spots. So, that being said, a site walk would be great.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Betsy, what would the arrangements be for a site walk?
Well, I think the board
We're going to talk about that.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Just
All right.
Jeff, to...
Just a quick question. I see that it says that the database there is out of date, and there is consistent new mapping in terms of wildlife corridors, and I'm wondering, excuse me, Dave, is there a newer database that this could be laid out on?
We're always interested in using new information. I think one of the frustrations all of the members at the Conservation Commission had was that when we talked about accessing those particular ones, they weren't ready yet. So there lies in the challenge of, how do you use something that isn't available yet? So we used best available information at the time, and that's what we did.
Thank you.
Jeff, to jump in. Section 1930, subpoint A3, discussing the minimum side and rear setbacks pertaining to the periphery of the PUD are 75 feet in the rural district. In addition, the subpoint also states that this perimeter buffer zone must be kept free of buildings, structures, parking areas, and roadways, except as needed for access to the parcel, and must be landscaped, screened, or protected by natural features so that adverse effects on surrounding areas are minimized.
Thank you. All right. One last call, public comment.
one other comment.
Sure.
If anyone would like to walk the land, I have no problem with that anytime. Just maybe let me know, so if I see someone out wandering around, I know who it is.
We're going to talk about that
Okay.
right now. Okay. So, from a board perspective, first of all, before we get into site visit discussion, are there any other questions from board members? Closing questions, comments, thoughts, clarification?
I guess, I don't know what the question or for staff, I heard some kind of a question come up regarding, our responsibilities to the zoning regulations, but I think when I look at the zoning regulations, it does actually refer you back to the town comprehensive plan.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we have to take that into consideration. Is that correct?
Yes, so that is section 1930.2, subpoint F.
Yep.
The proposal shall be consistent with the town comprehensive plan and all applicable bylaws. But like many has said, that the town plan is not a regulatory document like the town zoning bylaws and the town subdivision regulations. It is an interpretive document, but both documents must be concurrent and speak to each other. So while the town comprehensive plan is used as an interpretive tool for the town zoning bylaws, they must mesh.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, Dave.
And just to rebut that, I think Dean Pierce has also indicated that the only enforceable portion of the town plan, based on the Supreme Court's interpretation of zoning bylaw of land use law, is the provision that talks specifically, has specific guiding language that it cannot be incontrovertible in regard to its guidance. That's what the intent of the subdivision regulations are, as well as zoning bylaw, is that it takes and provides specific detail that allows an applicant to understand on day one what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do. And in this particular case, the population increase, or the allowable population increase per year, is the only thing that Dean has ever indicated to us is actually enforceable as far as the board. Now, I'm not saying you can't take it and use it as far as guidance to help you better understand what perhaps the intent is, but that was always the thing that struck me is, you know, the planner's always great about creating wonderful language on how to basically achieve certain goals. But the Supreme Court was also one that basically said without specific detail, it's not enforceable. Yeah. So Dean has come back and said to me, as well as publicly, that that was basically the position on the town plan.
Yeah, and that's where I'm coming from, because when you go to comprehensive plan, it's kind of that softy kind of stuff. And, you know, so what's applicable to this, from zone to here, is that kind of like subjective wording that talks about preserves the rural character. And so that is something that probably means something different to everybody in this room.
Right.
What is that?
We have to keep in mind that the town comprehensive plan is broad strokes. It's a 20-year plan.
That's what it is.
It is an interpretive document, yes. But from my limited understanding, I think that land use lawyers in the room can probably speak otherwise, that they're supposed to be concurrent, and that they're supposed to be consistent. And so if there is some vagueness in the bylaws that, you know, you usually use.
There is supposed to be.
Yeah.
Because it's not. There's a lot of places where it's conflicts with. And
But
the town plan is not prescriptive.
It's not prescriptive,
And in some cases, the zoning bylaws aren't necessarily
and so
prescriptive.
common sense kicks in.
All right, so let's talk about some common sense. We've got the deep freeze approaching the month of January. What's the board think about a site visit?
Sooner than later.
Yeah.
I think it'd be good.
Okay.
I agree.
All right. So, so looking at available dates, first of all, does it need to be warned for public
Yes.
notice? Okay. And
Yes.
how long is that period? How long? What's the shortest amount of time before that?
Let's pull out calendars. Let's think about this. We would need to notice it at least 1 week before, from past practice and from my understanding. We couldn't just have it next week.
Right.
It's typically a couple weeks by the time we get it warned. Because you gotta get it in the newspaper. We're obligated to do that. And I think their cutoff is
for
today.
For due process.
Okay. So does that mean the weekend of the 15th is it's too short? Is that too close?
Yes.
Okay.
Probably, yeah.
All right.
It's too bad.
Yeah, I know. So then it leaves us with, I assume we want to do this in daylight hours, would be most helpful. So that's a Saturday or Sunday by process of elimination.
Before 2:30.
Yeah, before 2:30. We have the 22nd, which is a Saturday, and then we have the 29th, which is another Saturday. Does board members have any?
I won't be around.
Excuse me?
I won't be here for those.
You won't?
I won't. I'm traveling.
Okay. When are you leaving?
I am leaving on the 22nd, and I'm returning on the 30th.
On the 30th, okay.
I think the safest would be the 5th. I mean, to get the most people.
January 5th?
Yeah.
That's true.
We'll battle
Just
the deep
people do
freeze, I
have
agree.
Plans and
Could be a
such.
January thaw by then.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Some hot chocolate.
Is that okay for the owner?
Do you have any snowmobiles available? Take us for a ride?
All right.
Four-wheeler?
All right. We're going to talk about that. So that's a Saturday. I'm thinking late morning-ish. Does that work for people?
Yeah.
That
I'm
would
going
be
to
what
say
I'd suggest, yeah.
11 o'clock?
You
Works
don't
for
want to
me.
go for the warmest part of the day. Probably around 2.
Let's go for 11 o'clock.
All right.
On January the 5th. All right, so I assume I make a motion to continue, propose a site visit for Saturday, January the 5th at 11 a.m.
Okay.
All those in favor, oh, I need a second.
You have to continue it to a
Particular
date
date.
specific.
Is it that the date specific, and then after that, I have to call another
No,
one?
you have
Because the
particular
site
DRB
vis-
meeting.
All right,
You
then
have
let's,
to go to a meeting, so.
all right,
So the
Fifth?
meeting after the 5th would be the 16th.
the 16th, and continue to the January 16th. So site visit on the 5th, continue to the 16th.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. And how's it? Okay, thank you very much. All right, we need to get John back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll try to keep you as posted as possible, so please do sign in and keep these legible as possible.
Okay. Moving on. Next item on the docket is, let me make sure the right one's here. Application SUB 04-10R2, reopening of application by Cribbs and Lansing Consulting Engineers on behalf of John Dustel's Revocable Living Trust to amend an approved residential PUD and adjust boundary lines between lots 4 and 5. Application was heard and closed on October 17th and will reopen at the applicant's request to submit new evidence into testimony of the hearing. Property is at Zero Pond Road and is located in the Rural District and Floodplain and Watercourse Overlay Districts. All right, where shall we get started? So my cheat sheet here says you're first, staff comment.
Interesting.
Yes,
Okay. I didn't know that.
it does. That's why I look over there every time and you give me that glazed look back.
My apologies then. So, staff received additional evidence on November 13th that requests additional amendments to the approved PUD. Staff has no qualms about the procedures involved. However, with recent contact with the applicant and their consultants, we believe that more guidance might be necessary as they move forward and contact buyers and consider the flexibility of their properties. And so with conditions of approval, the conditions of approval are a lot longer than what was previously suggested during the October 17th meeting. And this is mainly to provide guidance to the applicant on procedures for later amendments to the approved PUD.
Okay, so what would you like? Do you still want to stick with the deadline of February 21st or something different?
Based on our understanding with the applicant, that deadline works unless the applicant says otherwise. We have no issues with the time frame. If they wish to extend it or make it closer than February 21st, that's fine. February 21st, the reason why that date is that marks 1 year from when the original PUD was approved. And so that seemed like a logical decision to make. However, if the applicant would like more time, possibly less time, then they can speak on that, and that's
okay.
There's no regulatory portion in the bylaws that specifically states a particular time in which these things must be recorded or even recorded, just approved by the town attorney.
Okay, so from a staff perspective, February 21st is good?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Is anyone here to speak to this? Hi, would you like to come up and get sworn in? Sure. All right. Do you hereby swear and affirm that the evidence and testimony you give under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Very good. Could you introduce yourself for the record?
Sure, I'm Scott McAllister.
Okay.
I'm Jay's attorney. And yeah, that date is fine with us. We missed the original 180 day deadline, and thought since there's an application for the amendment with the boundary line adjustment, extending those. You know, the plat's been recorded. We've recorded one of the documents already. Just need to get in front of the select board to have them sign the open space agreement, and then we're done.
Okay,
So
great. Any questions from board members? All right, someone want to make a motion?
So we're basically we're proposing to move this to, what was the date?
February 21st.
February 21st, 2019.
So it's basically a continuation, is that what we're doing? Because we've opened a public hearing here, right?
Your motion would be to finalize the record and close the hearing if you choose to approve, if you choose to close the hearing, and then if you choose to approve it, then you'd make that motion accordingly.
All right, then we could all be done with it then.
If you have any more questions, yeah, if that's fine by you.
I'm gonna let somebody else make the motion.
All right. I've been getting corrected a lot, so I'll keep going.
Yeah, I don't have my arms around this.
All right, so I make a motion to finalize the record and close the hearing for PUD amendment application SUB 04-02, and make a motion to indicate approval, to direct staff to prepare a decision as indicated to approve PUD amendment. I'm not going to read all of that, but must be recorded in Shelburne land records by February 21st, 2019, and the other conditions that are there. Do I need to read them all? Or just say?
You can just say as written.
As written.
As written in the staff report.
As written in the staff report, as well as any other consideration. Does anyone have any other considerations? No. Okay.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Very good. The ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Getting through the list. On to item 7, John. Very good, sir. Item 7 is application CU 18-09, application by Civil Engineering Associates on behalf of Dan Morris and Karen Smith for conditional use approval to build a lakeshore erosion control structure. Property at 99 Lands End Lane is located in the Rural District, Lakeshore Overlay District, and Floodplain and Watercourse Overlay District. So I'm going to go look at staff and say, what can you tell us about this, and what should we be paying particular attention to?
So the applicant proposes the construction of a lakeshore erosion control structure at 99 Lands End Lane. In terms of the structure itself, the aesthetics, the placement, the staff has no concerns bearing that. What might be hard to see in the staff report, and that I wish I had posted up, is the amount of vegetation in the area where the applicant is proposing this lakeshore erosion control structure, and I think it is noticeable in the site plans as well. Around here, and just to be clear of the applicant's responsibility to file a vegetation cutting permit in accordance to section 1750 of the regulations if they choose to remove any vegetation in order to construct the permit. But staff would also like an inventory of natural resources in that area to understand the impacts, the potential impacts of the construction of the lakeshore erosion control structure.
Okay. Thank you. All right, is anyone here to speak to this applicant? Okay. This would be the applicant's turn.
No, I know. I just wanted to ask if you could explain where that is. I don't know the address.
Oh, the address?
I mean, I don't know the address and where it is in town.
Oh, we have a picture.
Shelburne Point.
Shelburne Point.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Is anyone here to speak to this application?
Civil Engineering Associates.
All right, we're going to swear you in, Jack. Did you swear in already?
Well, I did early with the group,
You
but.
got on the
All
map.
right, you're good. Master
I'm good.
swearing, that works. You're good.
So, once again, we've got some fairly intensive erosion on Lot 1 of the Jackson subdivision. It's clay soil. It has been impacted by high water, especially the 2011 flood. Included as part of the application was some photographs of the, I don't know if you had a chance to
I
see
did,
them.
yes.
If you didn't, I plotted some sets you
Is
could
that the
share.
same as we have here?
It is.
Okay.
And so the idea here is to stabilize, there's approximately 815 feet of shoreline. There's 500 of it from south to north that are susceptible because there's no ledge or bedrock protecting it. As you move north, the bluff and cliff, the ledge rises, and it's sort of protected, and the bank is too high to really do anything. It's going to remain natural. We are proposing a large boulder wall with this section, which would height-wise, in this particular case, because the bank isn't that tall, it's a relatively short wall. It's about a 5-foot and 6-foot high wall, unlike some of the other structures, because the 100-foot setback is sort of the toe now of the erosion that took place in 2011. We're not trying to land grab. We're really trying to, quite honestly, in these photos, we had no intention ever of land grabbing, but we're really going to build a wall right in front of the erosion. There is a lot of vegetation.
So that would indicate you're going to try to preserve as many of those trees. You're
We
not gonna be digging
absolutely
into
are.
the-
Now, these photos show a lot of, these are logs at this point. These aren't trees on the shoreline. These don't function as a tree. They have, they're not even dead, diseased, they're compromised, they're logs. They don't function as a tree. So some of the beach work would be cleaning the shorefront. But our goal is to build a wall and preserve as much existing vegetation as possible, and to revegetate, to slow down stormwater or runoff. And we accomplish that by we'll topsoil, seed, mulch, and allow that to return to a natural state as a no-mow zone. We won't touch it. Now, there's something that probably, in all fairness to Revy, he's not really, he's new. This subdivision has very strict vegetative cutting requirements. And on top of a regular vegetative cutting permit, we also have a setback cutting plan that has to be in place prior to any removal. And it defines forestry management zones and view management zones. And we are fully aware of the condition that would be placed on us, that we would have to meet the I'll get a vegetative cutting permit.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
We've already have Bill DeVos from Tree Works working with us. And the other thing that's really important about this project is that I've walked this with the state of Vermont. We have a Shoreline Protection Act permit on this property already. The house is under construction. We had and it's the work that we're doing and working with the Shoreland Act is outside of the 100 feet from 102, but we also have, as part of that, as part of the cutting, we also have no-mow zones already in place. We have a stewardly client here, and, we're working towards actually some replanting and some real management here, consistent with the Natural Community Management Plan. So, that's in place and is also part of the final decision for the Jackson subdivision. The things that we do have to be consistent with that. Okay. And so in inventory, we have a plan almost fully developed for that because we know that there'll be a few. We are not going to be cutting any healthy trees as part of this project. There's also a permit that went in front of the DRB in 2016 that allowed us to remove dead, diseased, and compromised trees as well. And some of those have been removed, and there's a few left to tackle. So we'll be working with Revy on making sure we have a complete application for the building permit, if approved. The pathway and the stairs to the north are approved as part of our permit for the Shoreline Protection Act. The trouble with this act and the town local, I was in Charlotte, I've been in Ferrisburg, I go to all these communities. I never know who to start with because we have two jurisdictional entities. Some of them we do concurrently, some of them we do one first, then we start with another. Yes, and the state, that's exactly right. So it's because there's two different sets of regs, there's two different jurisdictional limits. We also work with the Corps with their general permit, and they have a different jurisdictional limit. So we have 95.5, we got 98, we got 102, and we have different horizontal setbacks from each one. But I think that this stabilization is important. When we did the topo, or we did the existing conditions site plan for the Jackson subdivision, just as a point of interest, in 2000, we did the field work probably in 2003 or 2004. It was approved in 2007. We overlaid the 100-foot, we overlaid some of the setbacks from our topography, and we've lost about 13 to 15 feet of shoreland on the south side of this. That's low-lying, silty lake clays that just wash. There's no protection in there. So we think that consistent with the low-lying land that protects Harbor Road, other pockets of stabilization that's been performed along this part of the shoreline in Shelburne, that we have a good plan. The stone that we've chosen that we think is available for a project like this is it's a very natural, it's sort of earth tone colors. It's a mix of sand, beiges, and it's like the Shelburne Farm Reds. It's similar, it's from the Rice Lumber Project. It's out in front. You can see a formalized wall, which would be very similar with some conifer on top of it, protecting their office. That'd be very similar to the material that, or might be the material that would be used for this project, or a good chance that it would be, yes. And like I said, this wall, it's not really as high as some of the other walls you've seen come before you, because we're really just trying to get the toe stabilized. A bioengineered solution, total solution for this would not really work. And because we have that great change of elevation that we've talked about, we really need to get some mass and some weight at the toe. And actually, if you look at a lot of the best management practices, and even in the state's guidelines, even their bioengineered solutions will show a little tiny bit of riprap, protecting the natural material and the roots, or live staking, or fibercore, or encapsulated soil lifts. There's always some form of hardscape at the toe. This is just a little taller and a little more mass because of the forces from the wind and wave action that can occur at high water. And I want you to ask questions. I think you've seen a few of these. This is similar to...
We're probably the most expert board in the state dealing with this stuff. Questions from the board? Jack, can you talk a little bit more about the natural stone, where you intend to get it? Because one of the things I'd like to see is some sort of language in the approval stating that you're going to get stone that matches the
Well, it's going to come from, I can tell you right now, if approved, that that we have explored, Dan has explored, the stone that's left over as part of the Rice Lumber PUD, and that minimizes trucking.
Sure.
It's available. It's the right color. It's got the earth kind of tone to it. It's actually geometric enough, but it'll look. What's nice about it is it's fairly uniform, but it's a little longer than the blocky walls that you've seen from the Whitcomb quarry or the Panton stone. Panton stone's lovely, And, but it'll allow some texture, and it should break up. We're also stepping this, and we're just being sensitive to the land behind it.
It's really, really hard rock.
And it's hard rock. I wonder how Mark knows.
Would you be agreeable if we put that in just for?
Pardon?
Would you be agreeable if we put that as one of the terms?
That's up to Dan, but the answer is,
I'm Dan Morris. I'm the
Hi,
owner.
Dan.
So when you say that, you mean that it's coming from the Rice Lumber
Yeah,
property?
yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, we've kind of struck a tentative deal with them pending approval, so.
Okay. Okay. Questions from the board?
Actually, I'm sorry, one other quick thing.
Did you get sworn in?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
He was standing up.
Just checking.
Assuming that they have enough, I mean, it's possible that we might have to source, if we ran out, we might, but obviously it will need to match what we're doing there, so.
From or similar to, how's that?
Yes, that's great.
Very good. Okay, anyone want to do a motion? First of all, are there any other questions? Questions from the public? Okay. Anyone like to make a motion?
Sure. I would move to direct staff to prepare a decision indicating approval of CU 18-09 as prepared by CEA Incorporated on behalf of Dan Morris and Karen Smith with the 4 conditions that are in the staff report.
And I'd like to add the condition that stone be used from or similar to the Rice Lumber property.
Friendly amendment accepted for this motion.
second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, here we go.
Thank you.
Okay. So we need to get John back in here. We'll have to ask Robbie.
He's gonna review his administrative approval, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. I want,
Was that in this week's package or did I?
it fell out of there.
That was my last page.
That was from last week.
I remember seeing it last week also, unless this is something new. No? We'll ask him what it's about.
Oh, yeah, this is different. Did I even have that one in there?
Did you want to look?
Yeah, please.
Sure.
Okay, Ravi, we're just noticing that you put a memorandum in for administrative sign-off you did on a site plan, SP 18-08. And this is just the due diligence of notifying us you did that. Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay.
Yep.
All right.
I don't think there's any action required, is there? It's not, we don't have to make any motions.
No,
It's just
but
a-
I'm required to notify you in the next following, in the ensuing DRB meeting per section 1900, yeah.
Okay. Any other business we want to talk about before we close and adjourn? And we'll talk offline about some deliberations if we have any
Make
to
a
go
motion
through.
to adjourn.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.